Hey guys, welcome to this week's FAQ and Freebie Friday. Now for those of you new to the channel, these videos are all about answering your health related questions. So if you have a question concerning your health in general, diet, nutrition, herbalism, or really anything related to health and wellness, and you would like our help in answering those questions, all you have to do is leave your question or questions in the comment section below, and we'll be answering those based on popularity, the questions that we feel will be most beneficial to the entire community, and of course the questions that we are capable of answering. Something else great about these videos is that every week from that comment section we select one lucky person to win a free bag of tonic herbs or medicinal mushrooms of their choice. So even if you don't have a health question for us this week, but you're interested in winning some free herbs, all you have to do to be entered to win is make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and just leave a comment or question in the comment section below. And with all of that being said, let's get to this week's questions. All right, so looking at our first question, this question reads, I've been on a keto diet for a while now, and 3 weeks ago had a heart attack due to a blocked artery. So I'm concerned as to what's right to eat. So I've been researching for many hours daily for correct dietary info. I've came across Cadwell Estelson and his drastic dietary measures of no fats or no oils ever, just whole foods including grains. This is counter to all I've been following on a keto diet for years. Wondering what are your takes on the no oils or fats? Thanks. All right, so there's a lot we could talk about, but I'll just try to touch on the things that you've mentioned. So I'll get into why I don't think actually a ketogenic diet would be necessarily good for good cardiovascular health over the long term, and how that might even contribute to the heart attack, maybe in ways, and even the hardening of the arteries and things involved in the pathogenesis of a heart attack. But before I get into that, I would just want to touch on your specific question of what do I think about a diet of high grains, consuming grains, and no fats or oils. The first thing I just want to point out is that grains, first and foremost, are highly estrogenic. They're some of the top phytoestrogen foods. And why is this important? Because estrogen has been mislabeled as a female hormone, something that's generally health promoting, particularly for women. But even in men, it's not looked at for what it actually is in regards to its physiological effects, which is nothing but stressful, really. Of course, over the short term or in acute cases of stress, estrogen might be helpful because ultimately what it does is it robs oxygen from the cell, which promotes cell division and growth. So in this way, it's a stress hormone still. It's just helping you survive through a stressful situation. The problem is over time, one of the main mechanisms of estrogen, as I mentioned, the way it promotes cell division and growth during stress and even in cancer metabolism is by stealing oxygen from the mitochondria. And you need oxygen for the proper consumption or utilization, I should say, of thyroid hormone. So oxygen is the bottleneck or the backbone of oxidative metabolism. Without oxygen, your metabolism tends to improperly or poorly make energy. So what tends to happen when you don't have enough oxygen is your metabolism switches from normal oxidative metabolism to something that's referred to as glycolysis, which is a fermentation process where glucose is fermented, producing only 2 ATP instead of the 36 that are produced under normal energy metabolism. So in this way, glycolysis is sort of a stressful form of metabolism. It's sort of a backup reserve metabolism when your body is not functioning optimally. And in this case, estrogen can be a major driver of the suppression of the metabolism through disrupting the use of oxygen. And grains are highly estrogenic. They're definitely going to contribute to an excess amount of estrogen in the body. I don't really think anybody should be consuming grains as a staple part of their diet. So whenever I see somebody recommending to consume tons of grains or really any major extremes in their diet, I tend to always look for the faults in it. So I personally, dietary wise, my dietary philosophies are really very non-extreme. I pretty much promote eating how your great-great-grandparents ate. So it's more or less a pre-agricultural farmer's sort of diet. So how would you eat if you were to be living in the wild, per se, with like a decent amount of technological advancement. So like you knew how to, for example, cultivate bees for honey. You knew how to grow fruit trees. You know, if you look at it from that sense, which I think most people could agree would be like the most natural but also practical way to live, you'd probably be consuming animal products because they're a rich source of nutrition and calories and energy. They're easily metabolized and recognized by the body, you know, especially when they're natural. People don't have allergies to meat. People don't have really allergies to animal products. People tend to have allergenic responses to conventional feedlot, dairy, and meat, which is really not the meat that they're responding to negatively, but the estrogens, the antibiotics, and the various toxins and pesticides and herbicides that have become saturated in those products. So I think meat and all sorts of animal products, nose to tail, consuming every part of the animal that is edible, is a very natural thing to be doing as a human being. Looking at the consumption of carbohydrates, you know, today carbohydrates are demonized. They're considered to be the cause of every issue in the world. Not true. It's not also being specified the difference between a grain carbohydrate and a fruit carbohydrate. So I see it all the time. You know, people in conversations are like, oh, I'm eating my carbs today. I only eat carbs on my birthday. But what do they post a picture of? Pasta, cake, donuts. See, these are not just carbohydrates. You know, these are grain-based carbohydrates that have the phytoestrogens in them. They have the polyunsaturated fats, which are further estrogenic. Polyunsaturated fat, one thing it does in regards to estrogen, which could contribute to cardiovascular disease and suppressing metabolism, is the polyunsaturated fats. They inhibit the release of an enzyme that would otherwise metabolize and destroy excess estrogen, as well as having overlapping effects, sort of stimulating estrogen in the body. So polyunsaturated fats are very estrogenic, and you find them in things like grains. And you know, these are the things that people call sugar and carbs. They call a donut sugar and carbs. So then they become confused, and they confuse or fuse a donut being the same thing as an organic orange. They're very, very different. And ultimately, yes, any sort of carbohydrate in regards to the sugar will break down and metabolize into sugar. But the thing is with, like, let's say a donut or a grain, is that not only are they highly more insulinogenic, you know, fructose doesn't require insulin to be metabolized. Not to mention it has other beneficial aspects to it, as keto acids that cleanse ammonia from the body. It has minerals that ensure the proper metabolization of it. All sorts of beneficial stuff to fruit. But you're not just dealing with the carbohydrate of a donut or a grain. You're dealing with anti-nutrients like phytates and lectins. A lot of the minerals in grains are bound to the phytates and lectins. So you'd have to ferment them, or you'd have to sprout them to some degree. And even then, you're still not getting rid of the estrogenic quality of it. You're just kind of handling some of the anti-digestive qualities of it. So I don't necessarily consider grains to be a staple part of a good diet. In fact, there's pretty strong evidence, if you dive into it and do a lot of research, that a lot of our degenerative health issues sort of parallel the rise of grains in the creation or production of the industrial agricultural system. So it seems to be rising in proportion. You know, diabetes rises in almost direct proportion to the amount of polyunsaturated fats, canola oil, soy oil, and all the grains that we consume. So I definitely consider most grains to be a major problematic food for all sorts of various reasons. So that's my take on it. Again, you know, it'd be hard to elaborate on every detail why in just one question in one video, but the general takeaway is that they suppress the thyroid through anti-nutrients. They tend to be goitrogenic. They contain they're called goitrogens, but also phytates and lectins that specifically bind with nutrients that are important for thyroid function, like zinc and selenium. And then even if you were to sprout them or whatever and they were organic, not sprayed with pesticides, the chemical fat structure of grains is generally unsaturated. And the unsaturated fats, again, they impair mitochondrial respiration or energy production through various mechanisms, mostly through promoting the production of estrogen, which steals oxygen from the mitochondria, which again is the backbone of energy metabolism. So fats, carbohydrates, and proteins will ultimately turn into energy, but not without the use or the availability of oxygen. So in this way, consuming grains can contribute to high estrogen and low oxygen consumption, therefore low energy. Not to mention that estrogen is directly involved in the cardiovascular functioning. For example, a researcher by the name of Albert St. Georgi discovered that estrogen and progesterone directly affect the functioning of the cardiovascular system. Basically, what he found is that estrogen decreases the rate of the heart. So the heart beats slower. And in the Western world, this is considered a good thing. You want a low heart rate. However, what he discovered is that the rate of the heart is in direct proportion to the strength of the heart. So the heart's a muscle. As it beats more frequently, it actually builds structure and builds integrity. So a low heart rate is actually going to decrease the structure or integrity of the heart. So it weakens the muscle. And the only reason any sort of conventional doctor might argue this point is because their whole theory is based on backwards physiology, that a lower metabolic rate is better for good health. But a good way to look at it is, if your heart rate stops beating, you die. So to a certain degree, an increased heart rate is actually moving you to the direction of life. A slower heart rate moves you to the direction of death, right? Obviously, there's a certain point of diminishing returns here, but nevertheless, this has been proven in study that estrogen, through its anti-metabolic effects, so estrogen generally, remember, slows the metabolism, it slows the metabolic rate. But the opposing hormone, progesterone, to estrogen, increases the metabolic rate. It ensures your heart pumps more efficiently, more rapidly, of course, not to the point of, an overexcited heart rate, but to the point where your blood's circulating more efficiently, you're producing more energy, the heart muscle itself is more stable, it's stronger, if you will. So in this way alone, estrogen, by suppressing the metabolic rate, is actually going to slow down the whole functioning of the cardiovascular system by causing your pulse rate and your heart rate and your internal body temperature to get lower and therefore weaker. Now, how could this lead to a heart attack or something like that? Well, over time, if the smooth muscle throughout the cardiovascular system becomes weaker and weaker and blood doesn't flow through it efficiently, then the heart could ultimately become deprived of blood. It could become deprived of oxygen. And remember, the heart needs oxygen too, and estrogen robs the whole body of oxygen. It impairs your whole body's ability to consume and use oxygen. And that could be one major contributing factor to a heart attack. Now, going back to keto, as you mentioned, a ketogenic diet will actually, over the long term, increase the production of estrogen through a couple of different mechanisms. So even if you're not consuming estrogenic foods, by decreasing your intake of dietary carbohydrates, you're decreasing your body's glucose supply, increasing the reliance on alternative substrates such as ketone bodies. However, something that people fail to mention is that through the production of these ketone bodies, you need to be producing adrenaline or norepinephrine and cortisol to mobilize fat from the tissues to increase the amount of free circulating fatty acids to then try to use those as energy. So not only are you increasing the production of stress chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol that might directly cause a heart attack, but you're also increasing the amount of free circulating fatty acids which stimulate the production of estrogen. So a ketogenic diet, in short, as I talk about all the time on my personal channel and my blog, is going to contribute to a stress. In fact, ketosis is a form of metabolic stress that people only really tend to go into if they're diabetic, if they're starving, or they're in a famine, or if they're just so stressed out that they're not oxidizing glucose. And this is going to result in the production of stress substances, and it's also going to lead to an increased production of estrogen. So the last thing I'll just touch on that you mentioned is, what do I feel about no fats or no oils? There's one major issue I'd have with that. Now, he'd be better off to say no polyunsaturated fats, no unsaturated fats. See, that's a very unintelligent statement in my opinion, because when he says no fats or no oils, well, what type? You need to differentiate. Intelligence is the ability to discern and make differences and similarities between things. So when you say no fats or no oils, there are plenty of different chemical structures between fats. Not all fats and oils are created equally. So I would say don't consume polyunsaturated fats. Don't consume the mostly unsaturated fats and oils because their chemical structure makes them very volatile and susceptible to becoming oxidized or going rancid. So they become free radical in the body and they cause cellular damage, amongst other things. However, your saturated fats are highly protective. Put it like this: when a baby is born, the body is mostly entirely saturated fat. And as you age, as the body ages, one of the major biochemical changes that occurs is the saturated tissue in your body becomes more unsaturated, and then also becomes damaged. And this is why your skin starts to lose this integrity, because this fat, supple layer of the skin starts becoming oxidized. So the basic thing that I would say, so when it comes to consuming no fats or no oils, I don't think that's a wise piece of advice. I think it'd be wise to not consume the unsaturates, but saturated fats are protective. For example, saturated fat helps to promote the secretion and production of thyroid hormone. Saturated fat protects the body from oxidative damage and cellular stress. And saturated fat tends to contain cholesterol. You know, if you're looking at animal fat like butter, ghee, lard, the fat from animals, with the exception of coconut oil, most saturated fat contains cholesterol. It's really the only time you find cholesterol is in fattier foods that are mostly saturated. And that cholesterol is the key building block for every hormone in your body. Without cholesterol, your body does not make any of the hormones in the proportion that it really needs. Your liver supplies some cholesterol, but most people today are just not healthy enough to just rely on the cholesterol produced by their liver alone. I would like to think that that would be true, but everything from the environmental stressors to the genetic stressors, who knows what stress you went through as an organism going through pregnancy or being in the womb. You're likely born with stressors, and there's mental and emotional stressors that we all deal with. So unless you're a sage Buddhist monk who lives in the purest, in the Balkan Mountains, and you live off of the purest diet in the world, and you hardly move, you sit there, you have a very low metabolic rate because you literally just sit, and you have a shorter lifespan, and you literally can overcome every stressful thought in the world, that's probably the only case that living off of your liver's supply of cholesterol alone would be efficient enough to live and thrive in the modern world, because stress increases your demands and requirements for cholesterol. So saying no fat at all, no saturated fat, might lead to a cholesterol deficiency. And remember, it's cholesterol combined with vitamin A. Those two things synergize to produce pregnenolone, which is the mother hormone for every hormone: DHEA, progesterone, testosterone. Every hormone that you could think of comes back to cholesterol. So I would not necessarily recommend it as a staple diet. Again, going back to the first part of my answer to your question, a good way to look at it, if you want my simple, very refined and oversimplified view of a healthy diet, just think about how your great-great-grandparents ate and try to go from there. Imagine the grocery store doesn't exist for a moment, and think about how you might eat. You're not going to be going low carb or no carb. You're going to have a balance generally of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And you'll likely find that most of your fats would come from animal products, because you're not going to be out in the fields pressing canola into an oil to get it there. And you'd find that probably most of your fruit also, unless you're an agriculturalist farmer, that most of your carbs are probably going to come from potatoes. They're probably going to come from fruits and honey or something like that. So that's my overly simplified view of a good, natural, healthy diet that promotes proper metabolic function. But I will just say, leaving you on this note, that a heart attack, it might not just be dietary related. All health issues, about 90% of them, I think the statistics say, are psychosomatic. So most health problems trace back to mental and emotional stressors. Even if that's just, being somebody that's afraid that you're going to get a heart attack, or, if you have this idea that heart attacks run in my family, these things are definitely implicated in health issues. So I would say, simplify the diet in the terms that I just mentioned, or at least look into it. Study what your metabolism needs to make energy. That probably more than looking at diet. Here's my general piece of advice. Forget diet. Learn how your biology works. Go study biology and physiology. Figure out how the Krebs cycle works, how your metabolism works. Figure out what your cells need to make energy. And then from there, see what sort of diet would be appropriate. So forget about diet. Figure out what your body needs to be healthy. Understand biology, physiology, and go from there. And it's not as hard or complicated as you might think it is. So that's one tip. And also, the last thing again is just to like look at all of the stressors in your life. It's not just dietary stressors that contribute to health issues. I'm not making less of the importance or the effect of diet, but I've just seen too many people who get too caught up on diet. Their diet and lifestyle is immaculate. They're doing all these crazy lifestyle things, modifications. They should be the healthiest people in the world, but why aren't they? Well, because there's so much more affecting your health. Your mind and emotions affect your health more than your diet. Your diet does affect your health, probably more than, let's say, the alignment of the stars and what clothes you're wearing maybe or something. But my point is that there's other important factors. So mental and emotional health, that involves your relationships, your personal goals, your finances, your degree of sanity and honesty. All these things affect the mind and emotions. I would say from that point, your lifestyle is probably largely affecting your health. So that just means like where you live, your environment, what you do on a day-to-day basis. Do you drink all the time and stay up way too late? Do you do things you don't like to do? Do you not exercise? You never get any sunlight. So lifestyle factors. And then probably diet comes into play after that point. And, from there, I think if you kind of focus on those three things at least, the mental and emotional, your lifestyle factors, your epigenetic factors, and diet, then you're probably on your way to good health. But in summary, I would say get off the ketogenic diet if you haven't yet already. If you want to learn more about why, other than what I've explained in this video, you can check out my personal YouTube channel. I talk a lot about that, or my personal blog, nixfit.com. That dives into the science of that and why. The other thing is I would definitely not consume a diet that was devoid of all fat and oil, maybe devoid of polyunsaturated and unsaturated fats and oils. But guess what? Grains contain saturated or unsaturated fat and oils in them. So I also wouldn't recommend consuming a diet rich in grains either. So again, you got my dietary advice. I would just go from there. All right, so getting to our second question. This one reads, I've heard that it doesn't matter how much blood flow you get to the hair if the scalp is calcified. It won't do anything. How true is this, and is there anything you can do to reverse calcification? All right, so that's actually only true to a certain extent, because the fact of the matter is one of the major reasons that the scalp becomes calcified, or more so actually fibrotic. So these are two different things that tend to occur simultaneously. Scalp fibrosis, which is scar tissue, and scalp calcification, so the calcification of the soft tissues. So I want to talk about kind of both of these things. But what's interesting is that underneath both of these problems or health conditions, fibrosis and calcification, is usually poor blood circulation. Usually hypothyroidism precedes both fibrosis of the scalp and calcification of the scalp. And the thyroid is what drives circulation. So I get what you're saying to an extent. If the scalp is calcified or fibrotic, then whatever blood flow is flowing to it's not going to have a drastic effect on the quality of the hair. However, keep in mind that fibrosis can be regenerated. The fibrotic tissue can restore its coherence, and the way it would is through proper blood circulation. You see, ultimately the reason the scalp becomes fibrotic is because it's chronically inflamed. The reason tissues become chronically inflamed is usually due to an inadequate supply of oxygen and glucose, which is delivered via the bloodstream. So this is usually why hypothyroidism is at the root of hair issues, because the thyroid is actually what drives the entire circulatory system. So when the thyroid gets slow, you'll find you start to get intolerant to cold. You're cold all the time. And this is going to decrease systemic overall blood flow to the scalp included. And then when the scalp, hair follicles in the scalp are not getting blood flow, they start to become energy deprived. This leads to oxidative stress. Oxidative stress leads to inflammation, and that inflammation over the long term leads to fibrosis. So actually restoring good thyroid function and getting the metabolism back up to a very robust, efficient state to drive circulation to the scalp would actually be the best way or the most efficient way to restore the coherence to the scalp. Because if the blood started flowing strongly to the scalp again, it could deliver that oxygen, that glucose, for the hair follicle to regenerate. Now looking at scalp calcification, this is a little bit different, but not too different in the underlying causative factors. So this is where the soft tissue becomes calcified. basically calcium metabolism has become disturbed. So it's working backwards. Instead of your teeth and your bones being calcified, deposited with calcium, the soft tissue is. And oftentimes, the reason the soft tissue becomes calcified is because the thyroid is low and parathyroid is high. So prolactin and parathyroid, these are two hormones, pituitary hormones, that oppose thyroid function. And they actually have negative effects on the health of the hair in many ways. They interfere with cyclic AMP or CAMP, but in regards to calcification of the scalp, prolactin and parathyroid, which are only high when the thyroid's low. So if thyroid's low, these hormones get out of hand. But also if they rise, let's say because of stress, then they're going to suppress thyroid function, decreasing circulation. And these two hormones, they're sort of like the stress hormones of the thyroid. They'll increase when the thyroid's low generally, and they'll start to mobilize calcium from the bone and from the teeth, from the hard tissue, to utilize in a case of stress. They have many mechanisms similar to estrogen. They disrupt the use of oxygen, sort of putting the cells and tissues in shock. And when this occurs, they start to mobilize that calcium from the teeth and the bones, ultimately deposit it into the soft tissue. So if the scalp is actually calcified, if there's soft tissue calcification, which I've noticed sometimes people confuse for just scalp fibrosis. But again, these two things are generally overlapping because what occurs in both of these situations is inflammation. Once the prolactin and parathyroid are high, they start to interfere with energy metabolism. And basically, that's at the root of all inflammatory conditions. Once your cells, the hair follicle cells, cannot produce energy, they become generally inflamed, and this leads to fibrosis. So it's more likely scalp fibrosis, but again, they kind of overlap. And the underlying problem with both of them is the interference of energy production in the cell, which again brings in the major importance of a good functioning thyroid to drive that blood flow to the scalp. So the answer is yes and no, because there are ways to increase circulation that aren't necessarily beneficial. For example, I talk about nitric oxide a lot. Nitric oxide is sort of the stress form of what carbon dioxide does. So when carbon dioxide is low, nitric oxide can sort of make up for what carbon dioxide is supposed to be doing. In the case of circulation, nitric oxide increases when you're really stressed out. Let's say you're doing cardio exercise, your nitric oxide will shoot through the roof. And this is because intense exercise and stress suppresses carbon dioxide production. And when carbon dioxide is normally higher in optimal ranges, it promotes circulation by relaxing the smooth muscle. So nitric oxide can do this. So in a way, nitric oxide could promote circulation. Why wouldn't it help your hair? Well, because over time, nitric oxide actually increases circulation, very similar to the way that all other stress substances work. They impair energy production. So look at nitric oxide and cortisol and prolactin and parathyroid all sort of as a credit card. In the short term, if you have no money, it's going to get the job done. The credit card will. But if you're always increasing circulation on a physiological debt using credit just to do it, over the long term, it's not going to really help the way that it's supposed to. So restoring proper thyroid function would ultimately get to the root of all of the problems that have led to hair loss or hair issues. So there are ways to correct fibrosis and scalp calcification. The basic thing is to improve the thyroid function, because that's again what's at the root of all the physiological imbalances that attribute to fibrosis and calcification via inflammation and disturbed calcium metabolism. So correcting the thyroid is going to be the fundamental thing to do. But from there are actually many things you can do beyond that point. So correcting the thyroid is the fundamental first thing you want to do to handle it at the root. And from there, over time, probably if you give it 2 years, if you really keep your thyroid working the entire time, you'll likely see massive improvements. But some other things to keep in mind, and I'm making a video on this today, so definitely stay tuned and look out for this video. But one thing that's majorly implicated in scalp fibrosis are mast cells, or the degranulation of mast cells. So the short takeaway is that mast cells, they're white blood cells, they're immune cells that tend to accumulate wherever there's inflammation. So typically, an immune response follows some sort of inflammation. Again, the timeline of this is there's some sort of impairment of energy in the cell, so the cell's not getting enough energy, usually from stress of some sort. When the cell can't get energy, Then there's oxidative stress. Oxidative stress tends to trigger an inflammatory response, especially if it's intense or prolonged. And the inflammatory response tends to trigger an immune response. And so the degranulation of mast cells has been found to be implicated in the scalps of balding men, up to 4-fold. So when you see slick, shiny scalps, that's scalp fibrosis or calcification, and there's an increased accumulation of collagen fibers. So that's what scar tissue is, tons and tons of collagen being overly produced. So there is a case where collagen is being produced at a rapid rate, and that's what causes a scar. And the degranulation of mast cells is a major mediator of this. And there are activators of mast cells. So generally anything that causes inflammation would probably activate mast cell degranulation. But there are 3 major activators that I talk about in this video. One is going to be histamine, another is estrogen, and another is the inflammatory prostaglandins D2. So what's interesting for a little tip here is that all of these things, histamine, estrogen, and the inflammatory prostaglandins, have been found to be inhibited by good old-fashioned nettle root. So I'm making another video too on that in regards to all of the things that nettle can do at the root to correct hair issues. And one of the big things is that it can help with these mast cells, or the degranulation of mast cells, by inhibiting the activators of mast cell degranulation, which again, if you look in this study, is majorly implicated in scalp fibrosis. So yeah, there's definitely the case where you've been hypothyroid for 5 or 10 years and now the scalp's becoming fibrotic. Let's say you correct the hypothyroidism. It's going to take a long time, or it could take a long time for that scalp to fully restore its coherence, for the fibrotic tissue to become normal, healthy tissue. But that is dependent on good thyroid function to drive circulation and provide those damaged hair follicle cells with the energy they need to regenerate. And the challenge here is ensuring that you stay in this high functioning thyroid state long enough and consistently enough, not getting stressed out and triggering hypothyroidism again, so that way your hair can actually regenerate. So it can be done. It's just a matter of how stress-free can you stay and for how long. So how long can you keep that thyroid working? And one thing that again makes it more challenging is that if through that duration the scalp has become damaged and inflamed, well, not only do you need to start supplying the hair follicle with energy and the basic things that the hair needs to grow, but now you might have to do some extra work beyond the groundwork to get the scalp back into a normal functioning state tissue-wise. And so one simple place to start is taking some nettle root to help with the degranulation of mast cells. Other things that basically any sort of natural antihistamine, anything that increases or decreases serotonin and the activators of mast cells, so anything that would lower histamine, estrogen, and the prostaglandins, all would be helpful for correcting scalp fibrosis. In terms of scalp calcification, something as simple as getting in dietary calcium was one of the greatest inhibitors of prolactin and parathyroid, and one of the best herbs for prolactin, as I'm talking about in another future video, is KSM66 ashwagandha. That herb has been clinically proven to lower the production of prolactin while increasing androgen hormones like testosterone, which have a beneficial effect on the hair. So remember, prolactin is what causes the disruption of calcium metabolism. High prolactin, parathyroid are major drivers of soft tissue calcification. So you can lower those with taking in enough dietary calcium and ashwagandha KSM66. And in addition to those couple of tips, if you haven't yet, be sure to check out our Forever Healthy Hair course. I actually talk in depth about scalp fibrosis and calcification, everything I sort of mentioned here, but more thoroughly, more complete, and probably in a more organized manner. And I give in tons of different things that you can do. There's an entire video lesson on how to reverse scalp calcification and fibrosis, things I didn't talk about in this video. So definitely be sure to check that out. It's linked in the description box below. All right, guys, so that brings this week's FAQ and Freebie Friday to a close. If you're interested in winning some free herbs or medicinal mushrooms, remember, all you have to do is give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and just drop any old comment or question in the comment section below. Now also remember, because some of you have been asking, you've won in the FAQ if I've responded to your comment, not answered your question, but but I responded to your comment and I told you to email us at hello@vitajing.com. That's how you know you've won, for those of you who have been asking. Otherwise, if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in learning more, be sure to check out our blog where we have tons of additional information and resources, as well as our tonic herb shop to learn all about our tonic herbs and medicinal mushrooms. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.